Hey everybody, just sharing updated components, kind of a view on Tabletop Simulator. I always love taking a look to see how some of the newest concepts have changed the visuals instead of printing it out every time. Look here, we have the previous version below and the potential for having the names above each of the icons here. Though we won't need the names of each icon on the hero cards, having it on the character board helps you relate it to other cards in the game or the icons on the board. Really connect the words with the board. So considering that for sure, I love the new icons by Tristram. The one that was most confused when I put it on a poll on Facebook was the agility one, showing the kind of the sword-shaped wing. We'll consider that maybe changing that to a boot, but at the time I think we'll prepare for playtesting purposes. We've got the updated version of the creature cards, so that shows the ability with the four-sided die in the center, just to represent what you start with that, and the creature that the card is used for, and the ability, and a little bit of flavor text. That hasn't changed too much. I love the design that Tristram put together for the character card or the hero cards. So you can see that it's got the new red banner with the icons below. Still potentially moving the level icon back to below so it doesn't interfere with the cleric or the wizard part, because it could float right above the one on the might, for example. It doesn't really need to be up top. What that would allow for is to layer cards a bit better. For example, layer cards like that and still see the one, although the level isn't particularly necessary, but that's an option. The die itself, that shouldn't change too much, just 4 or 6 sides there. Then we have these ones we don't have art for yet, so I know some people like the way the giant die looks as the face. So if we do, or when we do custom art for these 4 characters, we'll definitely go with that feedback that the large die is something that people like. Next up we have the Dieminion tokens. So the Dieminion tokens, right now I don't have them double-sided, but what would happen is the D6 would end up having this guy on the back of it. So when I flip D6, I would have the Dieminion, so that players could choose, do they want to see the die icon to keep it more serious looking, or do they like the cutesiness of a Dieminion? So that's the kind of the solution for people that may like the game but may not want the cutesy part on their table. I personally enjoy the quirkiness that the Dieminions add to the game, because it is supposed to be kind of a fun, light-hearted dungeon crawl with you as the... Right, what else can I share with you? Well, I've updated all the tiles now, so if you look at the tiles here, and we zoom in, you can see that the hero heads on the bottom. I took out the banner on the bottom just to make sure that you could always see the map. So for example, on the 4-sided map, you can still clearly see the pathway below, where when I had the banner, there was some concern that the heads are still fairly visual as long as you see the level icon, or you look at your no problem seeing. I don't have these specifically aligned. Backs matching the fronts on Tabletop Simulator, but when it comes to building your dungeon map, there's no way to make sure that the right side up, so that's just part of the game design. What else? Well, the tokens, of course, double-sided. May consider having swords and agility on the same token, and having magic and health on the same token, for example, or really considering how to do the tokens to maximize how much you get on them and still have all the gameplay there. That could make dungeons more versatile by having more of different icons available. If you wanted to have a map where there were 4 swords, for example, you don't want to have too many sword icons in the game. So having them double-sided one could go a long way with that. And of course, I talked briefly about the Endless Dungeon. This would have a whole visual change if it were to proceed, but I love having just a single sheet of paper or double-sided board that could completely change the way you play the game, or allow the game to be a bit more portable with no dungeon tiles required. There We have it, some of the latest updates to Die in the Dungeon, and I've been playtesting it a fair amount. And one thing you'll see is the next time I do the print and play, you'll see that the rules are changing. So the idea will be that you only have to defeat 2 epic parties to win the game instead of 3. The other rule that will change is the stat dice. So right now in the rulebook it says if you get to a max value on your stat die, you don't necessarily upgrade. I'm changing the rule is if at any time you get an increase to a stat that would put it higher than your current max, you will automatically upgrade your die. And so how that past I said you either update your die or gain your bonus. This lets you do both. So anyway, that's how Die Roller is, or not Die Roller, Die in the Dungeon is progressing. I love the art compilation put together by David Palermo and his team, really putting Tristram's art to a nice collage there, and that's really high potential box cover art right there. Might still do a couple of tweaks to it, but love the visual that presents. And so the next thing we'll be working on, other than playtesting, is the Kickstarter campaign page, just working on headers and layout and GIFs or just different ways to visualize the game as we continue to play test it and fine-tune some of the steps. I think I've got the characters really where I want them to be, the creatures there, where I want them to be now with 2 abilities each, and the only other thing might be the dungeon tiles, just making sure that there's enough of each backer and enough of each combat and enough versatility that you could technically build unlimited amounts of dungeons, that there's just really great playability. And then I would end up designing more and more of these layouts, which would be, there'd probably be a certain amount included in the game itself, like a booklet dedicated just to dungeon designs, and then a how to build your own dungeon as a final page, so that there's replayability. Even though people don't necessarily play the same game over and over and over, this game will have that replayability. Alright, feedback always welcome. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I know my voice probably cut out a few times because I'm recording directly off my laptop, which does not always behave. It is what it is, and thank you for staying with Die in the Dungeon.